different.
Happy Hour. Happy Hour.
What's up? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, and on the phone line, I'm very excited about this guest from the Heidi and Frank Show on 95.5 KLOS in Los Angeles. Frank Kramer is on Hoppe Hour. What's up, bro?
How you doing, Ryan? It's an honor to be invited to be on your show.
Well, I have a crazy memory. So in 2008, I visited Los Angeles where my uncle lived, and I was getting off of the airport at the Pasadena airport, I believe, and I had a portable radio with me because this was 2008. And I already knew about Adam's morning show, and I knew about Tom Leykis because he was on in Chicago. So I tuned on immediately onto 97.1, and I listened to you guys throughout the whole vacation. And I've been a listener ever since then. And I just remember I was at Disneyland, and I was in 8th grade, and my parents wanted me to hang out with them the whole day. And I essentially ditched them so I could listen to talk radio all day and just kind of walk around.
Yes, we do. When it comes down to picking Disneyland or the Heidi and Frank show, it's usually the Heidi and Frank show that gets chosen first. But you were in 8th grade, and you were listening to nothing but talk radio back then.
I grew up in Chicago and was always really into Chicago talk radio because that's where I'm from. I listened to Mancow, Eddie and Jobo, Jonathan Brandmeier. And then like around 6th, 7th, 8th grade, being like 20 years ago, I began Googling shows online. And when Free FM came out in 06, I looked up the other Free FMs. And then that was kind of what really got me into radio. Because I just kind of missed hearing Stern on FM radio because I was a little young. Now I like listening to him on Sirius, and I've listened for years. But I was always kind of different than everybody, where everybody said that like Stern was the reason they got into radio. Believe it or not, Free FM, I love that format, even though it didn't exist that long.
Oh, yeah, it was actually the Free FM, 2006 when that came around. That's right when Stern went to Sirius, and I think that was their motivation to change the whole like name of the format to Free FM to go, radio's free. And, you can get it all here. You don't have to go to Sirius. But I started at the FM talk stations, what it originally was called in Los Angeles, in the year 2000. And Stern was our morning show, and we did the midday show. It was the Frosty, Heidi, and Frank show back then. And then Tom Leykis followed us. And so I was there for 9 years until they just got rid of that entire format entirely and just changed it over to, I think, started playing Top 40 or something like that. But yeah, the FM talk format was a rock station with no music. It was fantastic.
What got you into radio?
Well, I was never a student of radio like you. I mean, I listened to the radio. I was not a person who ever went to college for it. I didn't take one class. But my buddy Frosty, he was the guy that was in radio. And I was in college. We were from the same hometown, so it was a small hometown, so we knew each other. And he was working in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at WLUM, Hot 102. And he was doing a morning show, and his morning partner got fired. And this is back in 93, I think. And it was my last year of college, and he calls me up and he says, hey, I know your spring break's coming up. Why don't you come up here and do the show with me during your spring break? And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to Florida, and I'm chasing tail. And he said, hey, there's ladies in Milwaukee. Well, he didn't describe them. But I ended up going to Milwaukee for spring break. He said he'd buy all my beer, so he did. He did that. And at the end of the week, the program director offered me a job to be his morning partner. And it wasn't because I did really great. I mean, like I said, I was just there on spring break, just there for the free beer. But I knew that the program director at the time, he was a big pot smoker.
Yeah.
And I lived with a weed dealer in college. And so I was like, hey, man, give me the best bag of weed that you have. I'm going up to, hang out with my buddy Frosty. I know his boss smokes weed, so I'll try to impress the guy. And I had this wonderful sack of weed, and this guy and his girlfriend, I think at the time, who did overnight at Hot 102. We went over to their house for dinner, smoked some weed, and the next thing you know, he wants to keep me around because he wants to hook up. Because I was like 3 hours south of Chicago, so about 4 hours south of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So he didn't want to lose the hookup. That's the only reason I'm in radio, because I had really good weed.
I've had some of my best bondings over the years with different guys in radio whenever I've smoked weed. Drinking a lot of times whenever I'm drunk, I'm very honest, and I'm almost too honest where I don't really hold back. But to me, weed always kind of like calms me down, where when I'm talking to someone, I'm thinking more about what I'm saying than if I'm like drinking, let's say, Red Bull and vodka. I'm like ready to go, and I'm just saying whatever comes to my mind.
Oh, that's liquid cocaine, isn't it? Red Bull vodkas.
Oh, it's the best. It's so much fun.
I drink whiskey now.
What type of whiskey do you drink?
Well, I drink all types because I started one of my side hustles. You know how well radio's doing.
Oh, yeah,
So
right.
I had to start a bunch of side hustles, and one of them is a whiskey subscription business that I send you little tasters in the mail, like these. It's called blind barrels, and then you can get them in the mail every quarter, and it's all these micro distilleries from around America that like grain to glass type of guys that are like the rock stars in their own, 80-mile radius of their distillery, but they're not on the big shelves. You're never going to find them at the liquor store. But there's these guys that, make great whiskey, and I want to give them an opportunity because, I had an opportunity when I didn't deserve it. And so I want to give them an opportunity because they deserve it. And it's my platform. I've been able to build a business out of it and connect them to the world. So it's been fun. So I drink a lot of whiskeys.
So I don't want to get depressing, but radio is definitely in a weird spot right now. I've been in it 12 years. I've been to many morning show boot camps, and I don't know if it was COVID. I noticed this disconnect. I work with a lot of 20-year-olds, and they don't listen to the radio. And I noticed the 2003 through on babies, like 2002, 2001 babies kind of listen to the radio. But I noticed mid-2000s babies, like radio is just like a VHS player to them at this point. It's crazy.
Right. I mean, I think with the ability to have everything on your phone and to be able to plug your phone right into your car and get CarPlay or whatever, that just took the place of radio and presets. I mean, unless you have a very old car, then it's like the only reason you're listening to the radio, or you have a rental,
yeah,
and it doesn't have the attachment that's going to plug into your phone, and automatically you're listening to the radio. But yeah, my kids are 27 and 20, and they don't listen to the radio. And I was like, hey, you might want to. It kind of provides everything you've ever had, but they don't, and so you have to move and you have to evolve, and so I kind of did that when I created my streaming platform, Crack, just so I have some place to fall when radio doesn't want to have me anymore.
Yeah, I look around at radio and I see this lack of talent being grown. It's very weird. I noticed I just remember at the morning show boot camps when I was 19 or 20, 12, 13 years ago, it was always oh, well, we got to get the next up-and-coming talent. We got to get the next up-and-coming talent. And it would be all these people up there. The biggest proponent has been Mike McVeigh. The guy is a saint at growing people. Yeah. But I just noticed this lack of caring. It feels more like they want to save money rather than take a risk that'll probably end up working out. It's weird.
It is weird. I mean, and I think they're going about it completely wrong because obviously what do you have that's different if you're on radio than what streaming platforms have? That's music, and that's, it's a personality. And now, the leaning towards podcast, when I got let go from KLSX, which was the FM talk station back in 2009, I worked at an AM talk station for a while, and I did the same show that I do, but I was leading into Sean Hannity. So it was a total train wreck. And so after a year, they got rid of me. But then I went to podcasting and started a podcast network called Toad Hop Entertainment. And back then, the advertisers didn't know anything about podcasts. Like, what is this? I don't understand what this is. And so the advertising dollars really wasn't there. But, I built that up, over 2 years and then got back into radio, started working at 95.5 KLOS in Los Angeles. I've been here for 12 years now. But you've seen how from that time podcasting has really taken off. And now it's just about the numbers that an influencer can have to get a podcast. And originally it was, a lot of comedians would do it just to get a connection with the town they were coming to go buy tickets down to Chuckle Hut because I'll be coming in town, and they, kind of an advertisement for themselves. And now you're seeing these $100 million deals with these people who are podcasting. I listen to them and it's there's nobody coaching them. It's, it's very, very rough. And then you get the Hawk Tula girl.
Oh,
yeah. It's okay, got 1 million followers. Now she's Talk Tua. And, hey, good for her and all that stuff. But it's when I first started listening to podcasts, and it wasn't that respect that they have for radio where it's oh, my God, I can hear myself in my headphones. it was just lame, and everybody was into it. Now it's just oversaturated, and so, I'd like to be able, if there was some platform that could just weed through all the dog shit. There's so much of it that they could just weed through it and basically find those talents and be able to, to shine a light on them, embrace them, and maybe make them better. That'd be great.
Well, what drives me nuts, I'm not going to say any names, but there's a lot of like former radio guys or famous comedians that are very well off from like their previous life in either radio or comedy. So they have money, and you'll listen to their podcast and their equipment does not sound great. And I'm like, how are you somebody who has a lot of money and you have bad equipment? That to me drives me nuts. I've heard it where I've heard some really big names and they have bad microphones. And I'm like, that's where radio does good, is radio has engineers and things that can fix problems. But man, it's crazy. I've listened to some podcasts with some famous people, and I'm like, man, that might just be my radio geek. But I'm just kind of like, wow, you need a better microphone.
Oh, when I first started the podcast network, it was because of the quality of all the podcasts. They sounded, not just the content, but the quality of the sound was incredibly bad. And so I was like, I'm going to build a network that was a studio that had all the equipment from a radio station in it to get that FM quality sound. I thought that was so important. And now, like with everybody, be able to record into the laptop. Kind of like, we open it up sometimes to musicians to play their music, and they'll send us their demo or whatever, their couple songs, and they've done it, on their Mac in their living room.
Yeah.
And they've mixed it that way, as opposed to going to, a studio, have it professionally mixed by an engineer, and it's night and day. But it's like, because there's so much, it's saturation, like that, it's too much. And then the streaming services want to get you like, hey, do you have the choice? We'll give you the chance to skip through everything. No commercials, but just pay us to skip. Or I'm paying you to skip through all this crap. It's not good, but I feel the power that I can skip through it. Like, why don't you just have somebody like the program directors back in the day or the DJs back in the day introduce me to what's good. These are good personalities, and these are good songs from these personalities. So, have DJs pick the music for you like it was in the old times.
Well,
and not.
You know what I noticed? I listened to Call Her Daddy last night just for the hell of it. I don't think it's a bad podcast, and I just kind of wanted to hear what she had to say. And I put it on my Bluetooth on my TV, and I was like cleaning my apartment and just kind of listening. And I'm like, when are you going to get to the content? The first 5.5 minutes was her doing all these live reads. And I'm thinking, I ended up skipping over it. And I'm thinking, if I'm an advertiser, I should probably tell her to take a break in the middle of the show to read an ad or to have a commercial, because nobody's going to sit for 6 minutes of the beginning of the podcast. I don't know if Rogan does this anymore, but like, I just think about the advertisers, and they can't be that happy that like the first 5 minutes of the show is all commercials, because who is listening to that?
Right. It's a complete waste of time, because you have the ability, like you said, you just skipped it.
Yeah, so, I
did. If you're going to hit, 15 seconds till you get to the end, you know exactly how many they do. So you look at it, and you can skip all of it. And that's where I think it's like, if you have so many downloads for a podcast, doesn't mean that people actually listen to it. It was downloaded. Doesn't mean people actually turned it on, hit play, and listened to all of that. So it's like, oh, you got a million downloads. That's great. How many people actually listen? They haven't figured that out yet to give it to the advertiser, but the advertiser is jumping on this new digital medium. Oh my God, so many people listen to podcasts. I want to be on that podcast. And I think they're just throwing their money down the drain, because I see where like a big advertiser like Duncan has dropped all of its radio advertising. And I'm like, because it's going to go more digital, more on social media marketing and digital marketing. I'm like, what? Radio is still there. There's still a lot of people who listen to radio, and the advertiser and the endorsement and the personal connection that I have. I mean, I take it personally when we have an advertiser and they're like, oh, we haven't been getting any calls. I'm like, well, what else can I do for you? I'm going to go above and beyond, because I refuse to fail for you. And I think these podcasts, they're getting download numbers and they're selling it, but they're not getting any return on that whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's crazy about Duncan. I didn't know that because that's like the staple of morning radio, especially if Duncan's in your city. Like I can think of shows in Chicago that were sponsored by Duncan. When I worked for Rover, he had an endorsement with Duncan. Like that's crazy. That's a sign of the times of radio that Duncan, which literally was like I used to work events at Duncan 10 years ago. That's crazy that Duncan's no longer with radio.
If they're just buying digital, I think, when you got companies who are trying to fix radio in the way that, like, how can we fix it? How do we get people back? Like, why don't you go where they're going? I mean, we're giving away, freebies on our stream, which I found, as far as, like, ads. It's like, oh, you want to buy an ad on the radio, and then we'll give you 50 streaming ads for free. I'm like, well, why are you doing that? Why don't you go the other way? Why don't you actually value your stream? You're saying your stream is, not valuable at all because you're just giving it away. And now that's where everyone's going. Why don't you invest in an app? Why don't you invest in doing this? Because we're all on the iHeartRadio app, and iHeartRadio is like the hub for all radio stations to be on an app someplace. But then they jump in and play their own commercials over you. I'm like, come on, it's just a very weak system, and I don't think that they're thinking ahead far enough. And if they don't change immediately and start, moving in the way of valuing the digital part as opposed to the signal part more, then yeah, it will go away.
Well, yeah, and I've always been curious about this. When you guys replaced Mark and Brian back in 2012, I mean, Mark and Brian was a huge show. My uncle was a Kevin and Bean guy, and he said he didn't like Mark and Brian's fake laughter, but he always would tell me, because I was in the radio and we would talk about it on the phone, he always was a big radio guy in Los Angeles. And I remember when he told me that Mark and Brian went off air, like it was a big deal. How much pressure did you feel replacing them or coming off of doing the pod for 2 years? Were you kind of ready for that moment, if that makes sense?
No, I really was because, after doing it for 2 years and building something up, and it got pretty big. We were probably producing like 40 different shows. We were up at Universal City Walk. We were doing live stage shows and selling tickets to those. So it was like it was its own movement. It was some of the best times I've ever had in my life as far as being creative and developing stuff. But it wasn't enough to sustain. Like I said, the podcast dollars weren't there, like as far as advertising.
Yeah.
And so when the opportunity came up off of what I built out of that network, I was like miles ahead of where KLOS was at the time digitally. And they were like, hey, maybe you should, take over for Mark and Brian when they leave. And I said, well, because Mark was the only one planning to retire. And Brian never said anything. And they asked me what I would do. I said, well, I'd give the show to Brian. Don't get rid of him if he wants it. And the very last day of the Mark and Brian show, because Mark had all this, the show, the pomp and circumstance, where he had the write-up in the LA Times of him driving out of town in a white Rolls Royce that was convertible. And then Mark never said a word, or Brian never said a word. And then the very last day, at the very last minute of the show, when, a tearful goodbye, Brian said, well, I guess I'm retiring too. And that was the last thing that they ever said. And then my phone rang and said, do you want it? And I said, of course I want it. And the thing about, like I said, replacing those guys, I mean, they're both icons. They're both really great guys. That the pressure that nobody else wanted, the pressure of replacing those guys. Everybody wanted to be the person to replace me.
Yeah, right.
Let's replace the guy who replaced the guys. And luckily, I knew that wasn't going to happen. I'm like, no, I want the job, and I'm going to keep it. And it's been 12 years now that I've kept the job. I mean, they were on the air for 25 years together. And now I'm at the midway point of their entire career on KLOS. And so as KLOS is around for another 12 years, I hope to be, here as well. Like I said, even though I think radio is, on a downturn, and hopefully we can pull up, not pull out.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can pull up that, and I'll still be here. Because, I mean, I do have great respect for radio and what it's given me and what it's done for me. And I'd like to stay here for as long as they'll have me.
I think the only way radio survives is shows like yours that are like personality driven. But the one thing that drives me off this wall in radio, and it's one of the main reasons why I really appreciate your show and was a fan of Free FM, I've never liked the fake bits in radio. I can't stand War of the Roses. I can't stand Second Date Update. I just think it's so... I don't know what the word is. It's so embarrassing to do it to your audience. And then I've worked with shows that have done it kind of like I've worked down the hall with them. And then people will ask me, I used to have girls on first dates ask me, oh, is this real? And their face when you tell them it's no, it's like, what am I going to say? It's true. I never got the whole fake radio thing.
No, I never did either. I mean, like a lot of like the Ryan's Roses, like you said, is that Ryan Seacrest is a master of being able to record on a Vox Pro and then do a show live, or my finger quotes,
Yeah.
because I've always gone live. I've never been the one that ever wanted to record anything. I mean, back in the day, it was more of an art form when you had the reel-to-reel, and you were taking a call during a commercial break, and you had to, get it and cut it up and tape it together, and then come back and beep, 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 and play it. I mean, that was almost an art form.
Yeah.
But now for people just to get on there and voice track something as opposed to going live, it's like there's just something that is missing, and that's why I think is missing that connection. And with AI and everything else, they can just go ahead and use a voice and come up with the perfect thing to say, and it's probably a cheaper click. It's just going to be all robotic, bullshit, and nothing's going to be human to human live interactive content. That's why I do call-ins. I mean, all my calls are live, and it just happens in the moment. And I never wanted to do that scripted that stuff that most of it's the same bit, and most of these morning shows around the country are using them, and it's like, that's just not creative. That's not. I mean, the fun about what I do, which is talk radio in the morning. I'm not trying to change the world. I'm not being political. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to make people get up every day and have a good time on their way to work. And so, what I want to do is connect on that level where it's like they're calling in every single day, and I'm in their car with them, with their friends hanging out and laughing. If I start doing fake stuff, it doesn't entertain me. And half the time I'm just trying to entertain myself, because coming in here every day can, oh my God, it's the same thing every day. No, it doesn't have to be. That's up to the host. It never has to be the same thing. I never know. The people, my fans, are my morning show. I don't have one. Nobody wakes my ass up. I get up and I talk to them, and they're my morning show.
I haven't done the morning radio schedule in about 1.5 years, but I did it for 9 years on and off, and it's a lot of dedication. I don't know what time you go to bed, but I missed the Super Bowl of 2023 because I had to be up at like 3:45, and I was like, I don't care that much.
Yeah, I've been doing it for a long time. I did middays, like I said, after Howard for 9 years, but I've been doing mornings most of my career, and I think my body just got kind of used to it.
Yeah.
So my weekends, I get up early, but not like, if I sleep until 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, damn, where's the day gone? But I'll go to bed around 10:30 at night, and then I'll get up at 3:30 in the morning. So, and then that's just how my schedule works. And sometimes, it'll catch up to me, and I'll pass out on the couch. Obviously I need to take a nap. And the older I get, the more I pass out on the couch. But yeah, I love doing mornings, and even if I didn't do mornings on a radio station, I might just do mornings live streaming. Just because I like that. Yeah.
Now, how often do you communicate with Heidi throughout the day? Like, do you guys text each other a lot, or is it more like it's just when you guys are working when you talk?
It's only when we work, and then when we are here, because Heidi's doing the show now remotely. She does it from La Quinta, which is out there near Palm Springs, and so she comes in like one day a week, and she's live in the studio. But we've been together as far as like a duo for 24 years, and so our chemistry and our timing is there. So she doesn't have to be in the room, and I have her on a giant monitor, right where she normally sits. There she is, on a monitor, and it's in real time. And so, but as far as like, prepping and doing, all that stuff, no, it's like everything. Even if she's here, we don't talk about what's going to happen in the next break. She never knows. And that's what's great about our relationship and how the show's built. It's like, I build the entire show, and she has no idea where I'm going to go. And she's hearing it for the first time, like the audience is hearing it for the first time. So whether you like Heidi's laugh or not, it's definitely genuine because she's hearing it for the first time. Her reactions are genuine because and she's the best improv, person on the radio that I think has ever existed as far as being able to go whatever avenue you want to go down. She's right there. but we thrive in her not knowing what's happening next. And
Did she take any classes for like improv?
She was she came out here to Los Angeles to be an actress. So she had like some improv acting, some classes, and she didn't do like any of the workshops like in Chicago or New York or LA. But as far as her being in radio, when I first started radio, I started in Milwaukee, then Denver, Colorado, and I worked with Jamie White. I don't know if you know who Jamie White is.
I've heard of her.
Oh yeah, she was like the Call Her Daddy podcast before that was ever a thing. Like in 1997, she was doing that shit, and before anybody else did, she did that reality radio, and she was just a faucet. Whatever she thought it came out of her mouth. And so there was no thought process. And so to do a show with her, you had to be like right there in the moment with her, or else it would have sounded like shit. Because we're over here trying to talk about this. You need to talk about what we're talking about. I had to follow her, and so she maybe gave me the ability to think super super fast because I never knew what the hell she was going to do, and that led to being here and being with Heidi. And so we have that ability to really play off each other really really fast. A lot of people, when they get in the room, they're like, oh, shit, I'm intimidated to keep up. Even like some of the actors and celebrities that we've had in or comedians, they're just like, damn, how do you guys think so fast? It's like, that's just how we've done it. This is what we do. Like put on the helmets or put on the headphones, red light comes on, something just happens. I can't really explain it.
Now, what did you think of your time on Dish Nation?
Dish Nation, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was obviously that entertainment news in the urban entertainment news, and I was like a token white guy on the show, which was awesome. I thrive being the token, and I had no problem with it. But when they started out so grand and had all these different DJs or jocks in different cities talking about like what the world is talking about, then it kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller, like everything else, and cutting back. And they eventually moved the whole show to Atlanta, so that's why they let us go, because we were based out of Los Angeles, so the whole show's there. But it was a lot of fun, and I had to get used to the non-live part of it, because that is like live to tape, and there's here's the punchline. And I wasn't used to having somebody write punchlines. I was like, okay, there's a little bit of freedom. We had a little bit more freedom to have some jokes here and there. But then if you didn't, you had writers on the show too. So it's like, hey, could you get in there and say my joke about that? I'm like, okay, even though that joke sucks, I guess I will. But no, it was a lot of fun. It's a fun show, and everybody that I worked with, from Kid Craddock all the way down, was just a blast.
Now, before I let you go, how much does it mean to ever get into the Radio Hall of Fame? I love asking people this because some people care and some people don't care. And I feel like the people that really care are the ones that don't make it in.
I was recently nominated to be nominated to get into the Radio Hall of Fame, which was still exciting. I thought, what? Because I never... I've taken myself so seriously that's always been a goal of mine, but to get recognized in that kind of way is something that is extremely special, and I, hope to one day be honored enough. I've never been that guy who has been political in the sense of, here I am, I'm talking to conventions, I know a bunch of people's names, I monitor other radio shows. Yeah. I was never that student like you were when you were in the 8th grade. It's like I kind of got into it and then loved it. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I wasn't supposed to be a geologist, so I'm supposed to be here. And so I never took myself so seriously to think that I deserved to be here, that I deserved to be on top. So I've never really pushed for that myself. But to get recognized in that way is pretty special. We recently got recognized by the city of Los Angeles.
I saw it.
Heidi and I, our own day on September 10th. I said, I think it's because they, September 11th the next day, and they consider Heidi and I at the Twin Towers of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But it was, I would love to have that happen someday, to get into the Radio Hall of Fame. And then it would basically meant that I was supposed to be here the whole time, as opposed to but it's been a blast. And if I don't get in, I don't get in. It's not going to make me or break me. It would just be a great honor.
I think that's what's really worked for you is the fact that you're not like an OG radio guy, like some like radio nerds. Like the fact that you were supposed to be something else. I feel like a lot of times those are the radio people. Like for example, Opie and Anthony. Anthony was putting AC in people's houses, and then he left a prank call for Opie, and then Opie invited him, and then they became Opie and Anthony. To me, a lot of the best radio shows are the ones where it has the one member who wasn't meant to be in radio, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, that's my buddy Frosty. My buddy Frosty, he was, excellent, wonderful personality, wonderful radio guy. He was in it, for over, 35, 40 years. And he's retired now, but yeah, he got me in. But he was the guy, he was the radio guy, and I was just his buddy that we always had a blast, hanging out. So the chemistry was there. I think it's the hardest thing that when the program director's trying to get, let's get you, Ryan, and then we're going to get this girl over here with you, and we're going to build a show around you both. You don't have that built-in chemistry. It's almost like, let Ryan go find who his buddy is that he thinks would be great to do a show with, and bring that guy in without any experience, and go from there, and just. And then that's how you get lightning in a bottle, and that's why I've been here the whole time. Like I said with Heidi. Heidi is from a small town in Indiana. We didn't know each other from Indiana, but just that same mentality. It's having that where we both grew up. We just both kind of knew who we were already, and then it was just natural. And then, having Frosty, Heidi, and myself, and it was just, we blew up really, really quick. I mean, and then Jamie the same way. Jamie was a small town, Carbondale, Illinois. So it's like having that natural connection together. And if nobody intentionally put that together, it just kind of happened. But yeah, you're right. I think it's like if I would have studied radio, I probably wouldn't be I probably wouldn't have been as successful as I was.
Now, how can people listen to your morning show?
Heidi and Frank show. There's HeidiandFrank.com is our website. 95.5 KLOS.com is the station that I'm on. You can go there, and we have a VIP where you can listen to the show anytime, and you can watch the webcast every single day. But if you want, we're on 95.5 KLOS is on iHeartRadio, so it's KLOS Los Angeles, and so we just do the morning show, and it's the Heidi and Frank show. You can go follow us on Instagram at Heidi and Frank, and follow me personally at Frank Army. And I started my own streaming platform called Crack for this reason, Ryan. Like you were talking, like who knows what's going to happen to radio?
Yeah.
But I didn't want to leave my my future in anybody else's hands.
Oh, for sure.
From executives. So I created a 24/7 streaming channel called Crack, K-R-A-K. That's on iHeartRadio if you want to go listen to that. And and I'm doing live podcast on there now. I'm building a live podcast network, and I want to be able to, get those talent and the better podcasts and go, this is curated. This is what you need to listen to, and the rest is shit. So, and I have a show on there called Till the Beer's Gone. I have one of my whiskey show, 4 Whiskeys. And so it's another platform where I can go back and do that creative stuff and do whatever we want without, anybody looking over our shoulder and telling us what we should or shouldn't do. Kind of bringing back that FM talk vibe of a station. So go check that out too. It's like I said, it's called Crack, mycrack.com. It's spelled K-R-A-K. That's my streaming platform. It's 24/7 curated music and curated podcast. And go follow it on Instagram at my Crack House.
Well, it's been a lot of fun having you on the show, and I would love to do it again.
Thank you, Ryan. You're the best, man. You keep it up.
Awesome.
You're the last of us.
I know. That's what a lot of people tell me. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right, bye.
Bye.
And now was Frank Kramer from the Heidi and Frank show as he called into Happy Hour. Now, if this is your first time hearing my voice, my name is Ryan Hoppe, and I've worked in radio for 12 years. And here's the deal. If you want to hear more of my show, I do 2 versions. I do kind of like a morning show where I talk about celebrity news and whatnot, similar to Heidi and Frank, but it's just me, and it's syndicated in 7 cities. And then I also do interviews with comedians and radio hosts. So to check that out, search HOPPE Radio on all major platforms. And follow me on all social media at Ryan Hoppe Radio. This has been Happy Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, signing off. Goodbye.
Happy Hour. Happy Hour.
It's time for Hoppe in the morning.
RyanHoppeRadio.com.
And like that, he's gone.
Happy Hour is now over.
happy hour is now over.